Good evening, Jokoistas. Welcome. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whenever you may be watching this. Welcome to the Joko Conversation. I am Youssef, poet, professor, member of the Joko, and happy to be joined by my partner and comrade, Tasha. Hi, Tasha.
Hi, Yusuf, and greetings, everybody. So pleased to be back one more time. Do it one more time. Put in our 2 cents, or as my friend says, 2 calories,
Hmm.
um, into this effort to amplify liberatory solutions to uh, oppressive problems, liberatory solutions to the problems of immiseration and colonization and all of the things that we know are anathema to human society. And so we're always glad to come
Indeed.
and add our uh, piece to that resistance, right? Add our piece to the resistance to those structures, the powerful resistance to those structures, I must say, the effective resistance to those structures, though uh, propaganda and our sometimes our own belief in the extraordinary powers of those structures prevent us from seeing how actually effective we are. Um, but in fact, it is effective, and it causes those forces to be have to be constantly vigilant um, against resistance, insurrection, to be in hyper control of narratives. They're constantly stomping out a fire. So let's count that also as a win. Um, and so we always begin by saluting and forefronting and acknowledging the ancestors in our personal lineages through which we come, and those all of those energies and forces and persons and bodies and influences that make us who we are and that have led us to this choice to uplift the work for a just world. Um, we always acknowledge the ancestors of our human family, the African human family, that has certainly generated many champions and many innovators and many uh, uh, effective uh, organizers against these structures, and have right helped the world itself to leap forward into more humane values and into a space where really all humans can be living in peace and progress and a true enlightenment, right? And an enlightened living. And we always acknowledge um, and forefront that any work that we are doing toward these liberations, we are doing on the unceded territories of peoples of the First Nations of this geography, who, for some of whom it is called Turtle Island. Um, it's at their hospitality. It is at the hospitality of their ancestors that we are able also to live, move, and have our being, um, and expand this work. And that must always be at the forefront. We are in colonial occupied territories, all right, and we stand and remain grateful that those energies are also helping and influencing um, our push toward a liberated society. And so we always start with those three statements, right? And declarations and invocations. And with those having been presented, I pass the mic back to you. And you are muted.
Yes, I am, aren't I?
Yeah.
All these colonized territories, I said, just repeating you. Yes, that, in the post-colonial period, right, in the historic, moment of anti-colonial struggle in the mid 20th century, the 20th century, um, and the disguises that neocolonialism wears, right, disguises itself as independence.
Mm.
But yes, they're still colonized spaces, and particularly the settler colonial spaces where it's just taken for granted that it's in
Mm.
America or Brazil or Canada or in Australia,
Mm-hmm.
or all these, they're just taken for
Mm-hmm.
granted now,
Mm-hmm.
and that it must always be this way now. And
Mm-hmm.
um, but again, we say land back worldwide, um, and however people want to work that out for the
Mm-hmm.
land back worldwide. And I want to make a correction that I forgot to make last week. I think, I don't remember exactly. Maybe it was during one of our previous conversations together,
Mm-hmm.
or it was during, a comment I might have made during, no, well, anyway, when I was talking about this political hagiography of Charlie Kirk that's being constructed. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, I referenced Farm to Tabor,
Mm-hmm.
um, YouTube channel, where
Mm-hmm.
farm life from and farm politics, agricultural politics from a liberal, progressive point of view. If not revolutionary, um, at least liberal, right? So progressive,
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, and I still recommend that channel, right, as a way of keeping up on, agricultural news. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but no, it was the wrong channel. Because what I was talking about were the demographics of the MAGA movement, or what I was
Mm-hmm.
referencing. And the channel it's actually on is called Working Class Poor.
Okay.
Working
Mm-hmm.
Class Poor channel, the Working Class Poor channel on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
That was what, maybe 3 weeks ago now. Um, that the creator on the channel was breaking down MAGA, right, in terms of trying to understand the moment, the motivations, the white Christian nationalism, all of the things we know we're witnessing, the emergence of open white supremacy, racism, white supremacy. Um, and taken again, reasserting, that the taken for granted right of conquest by the colonizers and all this. So anyway, I just
Mm-hmm.
wanted to correct that, and do recommend people also check out Working Class Poor. See what you think, right? Working Class Poor channel on
Mm-hmm.
YouTube. But that's where the statistics came from that basically demonstrate that it is an overwhelmingly white movement, even
Mm-hmm.
as it likes to foreground it's those people of color that are in the movement, swayed by the movement, make sure they get good, plenty of camera time, way beyond their actual presence in the movement, right? Is I think it's something like 3% black. Um,
That much? Wow.
that
Okay.
much, right? Yeah, exactly, right.
Hmm.
And well, I'd have want to listen to her numbers again, and maybe like 10% Latinx, something like that. But I'm going to watch it again. And it's a few. It's not a very long video. That particular one where she talks about the demographics of MAGA and what's motivating it. But that was just random topic, and I think that is um, our description in the YouTube, or for the title, the latest outrages and resistance. What was it? Freeform rants. So we're kind, we didn't prepare a particular topic, right? Just to kind of whatever comes to mind. Um, and I'm guessing. I think working class poor channel is also coming out of a rural area, um,
Okay.
the so-called heartland of the country,
Hmm.
which
Hmm.
is really a funny term because that really means from the border of California to the
Hmm.
border to the eastern seaboard, really. And,
Okay.
and maybe people don't realize how, in many ways, how empty the mainland United States is, right? Because people, primarily live on the
Right.
coast. But
Right.
anyway, I'm distracting myself with, the because I was thinking about something else. I heard reports from farmland, right? And
Hmm.
a lot of discussion about how farmers are being hit hard um,
Yes.
by the tariffs, particularly around soybeans, but not only soybeans,
Hmm.
and farmers who are so squarely in the MAGA camp, in the Trump camp, many of them, as they say, triple Trumpers.
Hmm.
But then I heard reporting today
Hmm.
um, of a farmer who voted for Trump in 2016, but
Hmm.
very early on saw, wait a minute, that was a mistake, right? So, this is, I picked wrong, right? And so
Yeah.
since 2018 has been not Republican, not MAGA, um, et cetera, right? And reports, though, that he is not alone. That though there's a lot of reporting on farmers who are MAGA, et cetera, and who are even still, as they're being hit so hard, trying to defend their Trumpism, right? But he reports that that is actually or at least that there's a significant number of farmers who are not sticking with Trump, but
Hmm.
that more importantly, the next generation, right? The young farmers, the young
Hmm.
men in particular, who
Hmm.
are positioned to inherit their father's farms, um,
Right. Hmm.
are not feeling that, and
Hmm.
are at least more liberal, if not, with these political ranges, right, in the United States, but or at least more liberal. Interesting things, right, for a political party like, say, the Working Families Party, to want to do some organizing among young farmers, right?
Hmm.
Young farmers and farm workers.
Hmm. Hmm. It would
Um,
seem opportune. Uh-huh.
well, anyway, so just
Yeah, it would seem
talking
opportune.
about the resistance, right? The signs of resistance, anyway, from these
Hmm.
various outrages.
Yeah, and widening fissures and
Hmm. Yeah.
in the MAGA landscape, and
Hmm.
uh,
Hmm.
as you hear folk talk about it on in social media and just on their channels and whatnot, and a lot of the response to the suffering and complaining MAGA farmers is, and any, and a lot of the MAGA voters who know they're about to feel it and are feeling, and all of that
Mm-hmm.
already,
Mm-hmm.
is that, well, so long as you thought this is what you voted for, and so long as you thought it was going to happen to someone else, you were
Right.
satisfied, right? So,
Right.
in terms of how much political space or political, let's, I guess, socially liberal, the socially liberal attitude that supports, or let me say the socially liberal position that
Mm-hmm.
just kind of supports an ongoing uh, politic that is at least friendly to inclusion, because I think that's what it gets down to. Because what he really, though a lot of people, um, say, well, it was his policies, and a lot of people say that, oh, this was, about his anti-war stance and getting
Mm-hmm.
America out of these wars, and
Mm-hmm.
all of these promises of prosperity, and they all promise that in one way or another.
Right.
They're
One
going
way or
to
another.
change it, fix it, help it, whatnot, right? But in terms of the energy of the campaign, the
Mm-hmm.
the driving energy, the soul of the campaign was white supremacy, and not just kind of a matter of fact white supremacy, or just a kind of a general, uh catering to the affluent, or status quo kind of a thing, but but this Christian nationalist stuff, this virulent old time religion, um,
Mm-hmm.
really, no one
Mm-hmm.
else belongs, should have access to,
Yeah,
and should actually be eliminated in the cruelest fashion. This is what he wrote in on. You know what I'm saying?
that's right.
So if it
I mean,
doesn't,
virulent.
virulent.
Yeah.
So I'm like thinking, if all that, I wonder, without a lot of vigorous organizing, because there's also this piece where a lot of the people that have been stalwart Trump voters, or at least a number
Mm-hmm.
of, and there's some meaningful number of people that were these stalwart Trump voters that were Obama voters,
Mm-hmm.
in terms
Right.
of people looking for relief. People are looking, right,
Mm-hmm.
within the
Mm-hmm.
narrow frames and confines
Mm-hmm.
of a two-party system, and you know what I'm saying, and
Exactly. Yep.
of the very shallow perceptions of the shallow perception of the trajectory of it and the story of American politics, all these things that we talk about all the time in terms of
Right.
being engaged in the right. So we don't get those broad view, and still the underreported Sanders AOC movement,
Mm-hmm.
which
Mm-hmm.
can make a lot of socially liberal space. Never mind William Barber and the poor people's movement that gets no no space. Just people know who he is, but you get me.
Yeah, very minimal. I mean, it is not national coverage, or it is not covered nationally in any consistent way,
No, and
at
it's
all.
huge, and
Right,
it's
and
hugely
which is certainly purposeful.
significant.
Um,
Absolutely,
and
because
these are, editorial positions coming down from the top, from the billionaire owners of these media
right,
platforms, in a
right on.
for-profit media environment.
What to
You know,
platform and what not to. Absolutely, because that is an incredibly meaningful movement where there's a lot of political education to be free flowing, right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And this fundamental principle of inclusivity, and the fundamental principle of going into the other direction, going into, at least what's on the table is democratic socialism. It's on the
mm-hmm.
table. You know what I
Well,
mean?
clearly popular.
Yeah.
I mean, as you mentioned, right? The popularity of Bernie Sanders and AOC with many people, including folks who again voted for Trump. And I mean, that was one of the things that happened in 2016 is once Hillary was muscled in by the Democratic Party, Bernie, several Sanders voters voted for Trump because again, he's the outsider. Um,
Mhm.
and I mean, it demonstrates kind of demonstration because however outside he is, you still don't want to vote for a fascist, right? I mean, and he was clearly fascist in 2016, right?
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
it's nothing new, right?
Yeah.
But that's the level of disaffection. And yet, who are the most popular figures in the very unpopular Democratic Party? Mostly unpopular because it's unpopular with his own base right now, right? And just who are just frustrated with it, right? And again, the declared, right, the open declared socialist, democratic socialist, and those candidates who are at least nearing them. This what is he? Fisherman,
Mhm.
perhaps in Maine, who's running
Mhm.
for
Mhm.
Senate against Susan Collins, um,
Mhm.
who has endorsed Mom Donnie. And um,
Right.
whether he is a self-identified Democratic socialist, right? He is um, at least co-signing on many of the same
Right.
things, right? And
Right.
um, we heard Elizabeth Warren also, right, when put on the spot whether democratic socialism was the future of the Democratic Party, and she, without hesitation,
Said yes.
said yes,
Mhm.
affirmatively.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and that's not revolution. We understand that,
Right.
right?
It's a
But it is
yeah.
mitigating harm.
Yes,
It
it
is
is.
reform that mitigates harm. At
Yes, without a doubt. And when people are not suffering and pressured and those kinds of that message is not as effective. The virulence, like of
right,
while we're talking about viruses, it's not as catchy. It's not as contagious. It's not as
right.
It's just not. And so it matters. So that's a great ground from which to work on radical solutions, work
Hmm.
on full systemic change and full
Hmm.
um, you know, the fullness of a thriving human society, a society in which
Hmm.
everyone is thriving because it's been said and said and said and demonstrated that there is literally no reason why not. All of,
Right.
myth of scarcity and all of these different kinds of things. And so, yeah, there's space, but this question of whether the suffering and complaining and uh, fuck around and find out MAGA now, who are, oh, you sold us out and oh, you know what I mean? First of all, it becomes a Trump issue and not a issue of fascism, authoritarianism, oligarchism, and all these kinds of other isms that
Hmm.
are the problem.
Hmm.
Trump, I dare say,
And the structures that
yes, that
create
created.
the space for, right?
And
Yes.
then, right, so removing Trump and replacing it with someone who gives a little more space or acts like they're gonna does any kind of gesture. This is my personal notion. Any gesture that gives um white supremacist white people the illusion of inclusion, any gesture, any little small space is enough for them to hang on and they will shut up and go back home and there will be drastically smaller no King's Day parades and you know what I mean? They'll find a way so long as they can feel like I'm going to get a piece of that pie, which is part of, and it's not it's not different anywhere it manifests, right? Anywhere it manifests. If it's in colonial territories with their puppet governments and elite classes that are willing to sell out the masses of their people in order to have a piece of the elusive pie, it's all the same mentality. It's all the same kind of piece. But in the meantime, right? Yeah, in the meantime, how much can um, the broader, the view of the broader structure um, be magnified? The broader structures, the broader issues. How far can the discussion expand, right? Past Republican, Democrat, da, 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 into this realm of social democracy, back to the, at least to the conversation that Bernie Sanders raised in his presidential campaign. Um, look at our sister countries. Look at the da 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 da. Look at what That's still um, a great, I think, a great talking point, a great place to start to look. It's a great place for, in terms of it being a reference point that is commonly visible. You don't have to go far. It's not deep research. You can find out how people are living and figure out that that's a whole lot better.
And that even in places that are not, that are not industrially developed, right? People are happier.
Yeah, yeah,
People are happier.
yeah.
And even understanding there is a relationship, right, even between the resources available to countries with to the northern countries, right, the
Mhm.
including those which I guess what nearly all of them that offer some basic social safety net, welfare, social infrastructure, right, really
Yeah,
social infrastructure.
yeah.
um, there it's the same, we know it's still the same flow of capital, right, and
Mhm,
resources that
mhm,
buttress that up.
mhm,
But we also know, and yeah, and it has been the case, maybe
mm.
an, enough, we know enough wealth has been produced and continues to be produced
Right.
that this could be universalized.
Absolutely.
I mean, the United Nations could be empowered in such a way to, you know, do projects and clean water. I mean,
Right.
the wherewithal, or rather, the resources and the
Yeah.
brain power, the knowledge, the
Absolutely.
skill does
Absolutely.
exist.
Absolutely.
But the system requires somebody's got to make some money, right? Type thing. I mean, it is, just fundamentally coming down to,
Mhm.
who
Mm.
gets to make money, and that the right to make money, to
Yeah.
make a profit,
Yeah.
um, as the primary way to define what matters in an economy,
Right. Right.
is at least if it doesn't supersede, and it does, is at least by itself equal to all other so-called declared universal human rights.
Yes.
And in
Yeah.
this country in which
Yeah.
we live, I mean, it's a
Yes.
constant thing, right, that uh, business is able to hold everybody hostage, sort of hostage. And but if you raise taxes on the billionaires and millionaires, they'll move, and then you
That's
won't
all.
have the taxes and da da da. But if everybody raised taxes
Yeah.
everywhere, where are
Mhm.
they going to go?
Yeah.
You know,
Right. Go where? Go where?
hey everybody, let's raise taxes everywhere universally
Right.
on the billionaires.
Right. Right.
It
And is
really
that
will not affect. the quality of their lives, the standard at which they
No,
live, how
not at
many
all.
yachts they have, because we're
Not at all.
talking billions,
Right.
and they
Right.
will still
So,
get the high they get from wheeling and dealing, because you can just keep
yeah.
wheeling and dealing, right?
And it's so
And
interesting.
feel like you got better deal on somebody and all whatever.
It's very interesting that you bring that aspect into the wealth, or super wealth, or unimaginable wealth, um, conversation, that there is a psychology involved.
Mm-hmm.
There is a uh, some kind of, that's been talked about in, in various arenas, addictive, uh, quality,
Mm-hmm.
uh, that is just has nothing to do with, it just goes far beyond the, I can't even use the word need, right? But just goes far
Mm-hmm.
beyond being, having, unimaginable to the poor of us, the kind of wealth that is really beyond our imagination, kind of wealth and influence. But you want all the wealth and influence. And then when you've excluded, created this kind of two-tier society, then you'll war with each other for who
Mm-hmm.
will the hegemon, and all these kinds of things in this kind of, um, ethos, if you can call it an ethos, this,
Mm-hmm.
well, they call it a business ethic, and I know that's business ethics, but I've always found that an interesting, oxymoron,
Isn't it? Isn't it?
business ethic, you know, um, and I think I got that from somewhere, some comedian, but that there is now also with the dark enlightenment folk, right?
Mm-hmm.
This element of an attack on the moral underpinnings, right, and ethical underpinnings of that drive toward a more inclusive world, a more, you know what I'm saying, toward
Mm-hmm.
these
Mm-hmm.
concepts of fair distribution and these concepts of humanity and human rights. There's a direct attack going on, an attempt to promote notions notions that empathy, that's what's really being attacked, probably because it's
Mm-hmm.
been used
The
a
notion
lot
of
in
empathy. That's right.
culture. Right. Empathy is, a myth. It's basically and so that kind of basic undermining the basic, uh, glue of humanity, the basic kind of, uh, energy, for lack of a better term, um, that fuels, uh, all of these other, upon which everything else is, kind of built. The fundamental question:
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
don't you want, what is it? There's some golden rule stuff in there. That's a build on, but just basically the notion that it's a fundamental good, the most fundamental of goods, that you want to see another do well, that you don't want
Yeah.
to see someone suffering, right?
Right.
That you want to
Right.
relieve suffering of others, right?
Mm-hmm.
Very basic, the very
Yeah.
basic fundamental. And so
But
there
there's
is this
also.
about,
Uh-huh. No, no, go
just
ahead.
what you said, I'm wrapping that up, but just pertaining to what you said, now there is an actual narrative being promoted to seed in a anti an anti-humane
Yeah.
living philosophy.
Anti-empathy. And right.
Yes,
I mean, actual attacks on empathy.
yeah,
Even I even heard some trying to split hairs between the idea of empathy and sympathy. The
wow.
but a lot of this too, as you raised the dark enlightenment, right? Talking about
Mhm,
outrages. The A lot of that is also what uh, uh, um, repackaging
mhm,
notions of human hierarchy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And very self-worth, right? So not necessarily accepting the notion of universal human rights or even some of the most fundamental notions of human equality, right? And sort of the
Mm-hmm.
intrinsic dignity and equality of human beings.
Beings.
um,
Yes.
you know and their kind of this distorted use
Yes.
among the so-called dark enlightenment, neo or paleo conservative, um, you know,
Yes.
folks.
Yeah.
This distortion of the idea of biodiversity. Um,
Mm.
you know, uh, Specifically meaning really a coded way of saying humans are not created equal, so to speak,
Oh,
right?
and they're using the term biodiversity. They're
Right.
stretching
Racial
biodiversity
hierarchy,
around that.
all that
Okay.
type stuff. Right, exactly. And to
Okay.
reinstitute the various racial hierarchies, right? And
Yeah.
um, or if it's not, or human diversity, right? Or just the way they're using it,
Yeah.
and for a while, right? Even pre this anti DEI stuff,
Human
when you can't even
diversity.
have
Yeah.
diversity
Human diversity. Yeah.
in your science grant proposal, just looking at the diversity of plants and whatnot in in a biome or something, just because the
Mm-hmm.
word diversity is flagged, right? So
Mm-hmm.
no, this has been part of their discourse for a while, that this again, and really the whole idea of pointing to humans are it's the quote unquote diversity of human ability, skill,
Mm-hmm.
all the repackaged old racial hierarchy tropes,
That's all. Mm-hmm.
which again, this dark enlightenment crap is just repackaging
That's
sort of
all.
pre-modern, anti-democratic, um, you know, uh, uh, patently patriarchal structures, ideas, right?
Right.
Ideologies.
Right.
And I think people could. What am I trying to say? Ideas which we continue to struggle against, right, in this moment, and
Yes.
but in what has been increasingly through modernity, democratic spaces, right? Creating of democratic spaces, and that the revolutionary moment, using that broadly, of from the late 18th century through the 20th century, really, right? And we've talked about that, right? The really, it's a war against modernity, right? And a war against the 20th century. And yeah, that's it, right? They want to go pre
Yeah.
modernity, and
Yes.
reinstitute these old kind of structures that they're convinced work better. The great man, neo, what do you call them? Neo feudalisms, right? Tech
Yes.
feudalisms,
Yes.
corporate
Yes.
feudalisms.
Yes. Yes.
And talk about outrageous, right? How and the
Yes.
shrinking of the democratic space is what they definitely want most, right? Is the anti-democratic part, that they have to push back on to make the other stuff viable. And of course, they're doing it, right? I mean, this is
And
project.
of course they're doing.
Even if they aren't dark enlightenment folks, these Project 2025, Heritage Foundation, Christian nationalists, federalist judges. I mean, they might as well be, if they,
Yeah.
if
I
they
mean,
might as well be, right?
because fundamentally, all of those varied, whatever the variances in those doctrines are, there is a common ground and a common
Mm-hmm.
denominator of
Mm-hmm.
there is some group or groups, there is chosen and unchosen, and unto
Right,
the
right,
unchosen is meant suffering.
right.
So, however you define that, you know what I mean? However you are, whatever the philosophical structure through which you articulate that, it ends up being the end sum. Even if we're talking about patriarchy, right? In terms of
Mm-hmm.
I've heard folks talk about this Tylenol piece, and or this, no Tylenol during pregnancy, and
Mhm.
kind of going for
Mhm.
this, endangerment of pregnancy and criminalizing, and kind of
Mhm. Mhm.
which what that is hedging toward, what that ultimately
Mhm.
can hedge toward, right?
Mhm.
Um, you're known to, you take a substance that is abortifacient, essentially, or that will cause harm to the fetus, and that will become criminalizable, and whatever. Just trying to create dragnets and whatnot of various kinds.
Mhm.
But you
Mhm.
mentioned that, it's women's men are chosen, and women are the gender assigned to suffer through
To serve them,
childbirth,
right?
through menstruation,
And
and really,
yeah,
that's
that's right.
part of the arrangement. That's part of what's proper. And
Mhm.
so as they're becoming more and more, well, we'll see. Because I think people have a great capacity for denial, and even as these conversations and these connections are being had, um, about, for instance, I'm like just right here in the uh, women's status area. You know what I'm saying? Because that is, I think, a place possibly where a certain category of affluent, self identified white women who have become comfortable as the recipients actually of affirmative action. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And
Mhm.
then, you know what I'm saying? And there's a lot of things I think this kind of taken for granted kind of stuff, um, where they're, possibly having, a sense that this is, as becoming popular to say now, this is for me and not for thee, and whatnot, and thinking they'll somehow be in not be in the class of sufferers. They can't see themselves in the class of sufferers, but that, this has not been so long. Part of this um, status, reasserting these kinds of hierarchies and these kinds of status is not just if you believe poor women should have the right to bodily autonomy and be able to abort pregnancies, unwanted pregnancies, but also gets down to whether you can have a bank account without your husband's approval or another you know what I'm saying? These
With no
kinds of
appreciation for how recent
that
that is
is.
in history, right? How recent that
Yes.
is.
Yes. And this
I mean,
is,
I'm older. I'm older than that ability, right?
right.
So,
Right.
yeah,
Absolutely.
you might be older
Abs-
than that ability because it was
I
sometime in the
might be.
70s, maybe the mid 70s,
It,
right?
in fact, it is. That's right.
You know,
I am older than that ability in my
so what?
lifetime.
The, the
Yeah.
the the Ford administration or the Carter administration that happened, and so that is. I mean, I guess if you're 20 something, that may not seem very recent, or if you're, a teen,
Yeah.
but it ain't that long ago, right? You're still
No,
listening to music from that time, right? That being sampled.
absolutely. And knowing the
You know,
words. Yeah.
right.
Absolutely.
It's not that,
Still
so
music.
anyway.
Right. Yeah. And so, of course, we're habitually in our anti intellectual culture, we are also habitually uh, ahistoric in our
Yeah.
thinking, that we have very short memory, no memory, which is a lot how this kind of stretching new terms around old
Mhm.
forms
Mhm.
gets a pass. And so people
Yeah.
think they're talking about something new, or think
Yeah.
that you're being closed-minded if you say, hey, fascism isn't a good idea. Right. And that's been, and whatnot. Well, how do you know? Are you just being closed minded? I can just hear the conversation. And, I get some of that from my daughter, who was like, she was talking about whatever she was getting adamant about, something about um, the incel world and the, kind of new manhood cult vibe and whatnot. and she was kind of, you know, lift off on some conversation she had with friends. And I was like, yeah, I think, trying to encourage her to, you know, when you're talking to your friends, don't be too aggressive in being in. And she was like, no, no, no. Some ideas are just bad ideas and they just need to be confronted and put in the trash in the strongest terms. She said, some shit is just a bad idea. And
Hmm.
so, you know, forgetting, you know, that a historical and at last of lack of historical memory leaves everybody vulnerable. You know, another way of saying you don't know the history, you're going to repeat it. To why was this a bad idea? You know, this is actually X, Y, Z, whatever you want to put in the blank. Why was this a bad idea? And so, you know, while it gets reasserted, you know, while it
Hmm.
gets reasserted, and so it's quite interesting. But also, as we're having this conversation about the for me and not for thee, and the reinstating and uh, of the rich poor hierarchy, you know, the elimination of the middle class, and the, you know, and that kind of expansion toward inclusion,
Hmm.
wealth inclusion and wealth distribution. That takes us to, in terms of current outrages, the shutdown, you know, over the Medicare and Medicaid and all of these, you know, uh, issues um, that have to do with wealth distribution, trying to fight for some kind of space, or just not. And it is wealth distribution ultimately, but just the don't cast millions of people into suffering. You know, just don't do that, you know. And so, no, we are going to be stalwart and let the, you know, the however, for however long, we'll see how long it lasts, you know.
I mean,
Shut.
but um, yeah, it's so it's just it's an interesting thing. I just talk about, well, what can an opposition political party do? How do people continue to resist to demand what space they can? And people, and then that's primarily people being in the streets in the various ways they are, and you know
Mm-hmm.
institutions I've been very timid in any kind of resistance, and hope it's all the point is to kind of to destabilize everything, and remake the society. The
Mm-hmm.
but again, it's all the various signs of crisis are everywhere. If you're the Democratic Party, right, and you go along with whatever the budget is, the budget is designed to inflict harm, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and so the last time you went along with it, Chuck Schumer, right, got however many votes to be able to pass it, and people
Mm-hmm.
suffered, right, funding the fascist government in effect.
Mm-hmm.
This time, okay, so the Democrats are going to hold the line, because again, the next bill is to right to fund the suffering, right, to fund the cruelty, but also recognizing then now that the government is unfunded. Um, so then suffering, right? So there will be suffering as a result of that also. And the way in which now, and some of this is wolf tickets that they're selling, that the
Mm-hmm.
regime is wanting to sell, about how
Mm-hmm.
well, this is a good thing for us and we can kind of do what we want.
Mm-hmm.
But they are trying to do whatever they can, right, to take advantage of the moment. So it's just really just all part of the fundamental crisis that the empire is in, that the country is in. Um, that I, and how is it going to be reconciled? Again, these contradictions are turning into antagonisms,
Right.
what distinguishes an antagonism from a contradiction is there is no resolution, right, for an antagonism.
mm,
Um,
mm,
and again, I'm looking back to the crisis, the slow civil war, as
mm-hmm.
a term that's being used if to describe what blue states, donor states, rather not donating, right, holding their
Yeah,
funds.
yeah,
But the slow civil
yeah,
war and that civil war that has been talked about on the extremes of the
mm,
right wing, and even
right,
in the within the halls of Congress. Um,
right,
how
right.
long? Decades, really, right? And they've been preparing for decades. But January
Mm,
6th, 2021, right? I mean,
yes,
after
ma'am.
that, what
Yes,
and after that what and then they are all and then that group of people are
yes,
exonerated, right, pardoned,
yes,
exonerated, commuted, whatever, back on the
yes.
street. um but even if that hadn't happened, because not everyone who participated went to jail, right?
Right.
um so even if they hadn't been pardoned, there's still all the others that have already demonstrated how far they're willing to go if things don't go their way through the ordinary structures. So there's
Yes.
already, that's already a point of antagonism. So and as you've heard me say before, I mean, I can't help but be pessimistic about how
Yeah.
this particular country goes forward. And there's that part of us, and this is the weirdness of living in this fascist regime. And
Mm-hmm.
particularly, I think this has been reported of many fascist regimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
The way in which every day it gets a little closer to being just sort of an everyday thing, and
Yes.
normalized, and sort of
Yes.
quiet, and you don't necessarily see it everywhere in the city the same way. um
Right.
just again, an
Right.
intensification of the way
Yes.
internal colonialism has worked, right? And we know areas don't
Yes.
get policed the same, and now
Right.
that's
Right.
militarized even further, right?
Yes.
And the way it becomes normal, right? The way it becomes normal, and then um, if you're shrinking the democratic space, which they're attempting to do,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
declaring your primary opposition party, which is why I say the duopoly must be dead, right? It's dead. They are not sharing the rule anymore, right? The one
Yes.
party, which is the Republican Party, which is itself transformed, which is
Yeah.
why you got all these
Right.
ex-Republicans, right? Like out at the ones
Right.
at the bulwark and whatnot.
Yeah.
Um, what they
Yeah.
call the never Trumper Republicans who've gone in whatever, right?
Right. Yeah.
So the current Republican Party is the MAGA party. It's not what it
Right.
was. And
Right.
the Democratic Party is compromised as it is continues to really be unable to meet the moment, and
Right.
really like constitutionally unable to meet the moment, right, because of all of their compromise, and attempting to repress and suppress its insurgency, right? The insurgency within
Mm-hmm.
its ranks, which is where its base is.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, um, and the other side is doing everything they can to do to consolidate power. And how far along is Project 2025 now? 90% achieved, near?
Really? Okay.
At least in the 80% for sure. It's at least
Okay.
80%. And if it was 50% achieved,
Okay.
that's too much. And it's
Of
already,
course.
they already have
10%.
at least a B, right?
The
They've earned at
idea.
least a B
Yeah.
in implementing their project. The
Mm.
And now the outrage of the address, was it Tuesday, that they made
Yes.
this mad address to
Yeah.
the elected military brain trust of the United States,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and
Mad in every
effectively
way.
declaring war on the population of the United States, or at least dissidents
Yeah.
in the United States.
Right.
So,
Right. War on
um,
the radical left. Right. War on the enemy within. There is
war on
the
the
war.
enemy within,
The war.
and not seem to be well received in the audience. Stoic generals.
Uh-huh.
Although I did see some footage of one general having to do a face plant. Because it was,
Uh-huh.
they're saying, I mean, it's been described as unhinged, and I guess you could call them, both of those addresses, unhinged,
Yeah, they were.
but
Yeah.
they're calculated, right? At the same time. Um, so we'll see what that resistance looks like, because we already know morale is down in the military, certainly in the National Guard. And you also have to know, um, whatever their various politics, they're the spearheads or the brain trust of the empire militarily, right? Um, but they're also some of the most informed and educated and experienced people on earth.
Yeah.
And you have to
Yeah.
think they're sitting there listening to these
Yeah. Oh
two
God.
morons, these two
Yes.
fools. And then
Yes.
you got to be dying a little inside, right?
Yeah.
This is the leadership of the greatest or the strongest empire in the world. Well, at least
Right.
in its own eyes, because that
Yeah.
what is it, feet of clay?
That's what gave them the cojones to get up there and to call this thing in the first place and get up there and say what they had to say. They believe their own press. They really think that they are these great leaders. They really think that. They have no
Mm-hmm.
idea. The dude had no idea how ridiculous, utterly absurd and ridiculous, and I don't even know what to say, Yusuf. He
Mm-hmm.
told these people
Mm-hmm.
that no fat generals. He said, like remember the little bumper sticker that used to be like no fat chicks and the line, and all that. No
Mm-hmm.
fat. Really,
Right.
really, you're deep. He had no idea
Yeah.
that is not what you. That is not a message that needs to be delivered to these world class.
And especially to spend the millions of dollars to bring
Oh, here's
all
the
of these
it.
officers and their staff,
Wow.
and all the
Right.
communication
Right.
and just
All the
all the
support staff.
millions of dollars to do
Yeah.
this, where
To put
people,
them
what are
all
some of
in
the
the same
reports,
place. Right.
they could have sent an email for this.
Yes,
I
exactly.
mean,
Exactly.
but it's the
Exactly.
performance, though, right? It goes back to that, the fascist aesthetic, and the performance by, or the rule by
Yes.
spectacle, right?
Spectacle. That is absolutely it, because that's all that was. And they are so committed to it and so wrapped up to it. And I think so, I can't even say that, well, someone in the room is cynical. Whether or not they're in the room, there's someone out there that's cynical. You know what I'm saying? But these people, not that they're certainly not true. Well, I don't even know how to say that. I don't even know what to say about that. But I know Trump is no true Christian believer of any ilk. Hegseth, not so sure. He's got some kind of deep
He's a true
relationships in this
believer.
Christian
Yeah,
national,
yeah,
Christian
I think so.
nationalist
Yeah, they're
thing.
true believers. That's part of the problem.
But what they part of also what they truly believe in is their own uh uh narcissistic,
Yep.
unsubstantiated greatness. There's no reason for them to
Because
esteem
as you
themselves
said
the way that
earlier,
they do.
they see themselves as the chosen.
They see themselves as the chosen. They absolutely see themselves as the chosen. And then Mr. Trump sees himself as, as the Donald. He sees himself as some
Yeah,
kind of special human being, because we understand he's
the
got
chosen
some
of the
other
chosen.
things
Right?
working with him.
Right.
But as a version of the chosen, he's another
Yeah, he's
kind of
the chosen of the chosen. Right? They're the
and they're
chosen
all
people, and he's the chosen one. Right?
white male chosen. So
And they're all, well. That's the primary criteria to even be considered. Right? I mean,
yeah, so I mean, we'll see if I've looked for. I haven't had a lot of time to really hunt, but and I thought it would be more prominent. I've seen a few descriptions of reactions from that group. Disparaging reactions, disdainful reactions, and
Hmm.
not a lot, not
About
an out.
the Tuesday addresses.
Yeah, about
Yeah.
the Tuesday address, about the pull. Yeah, about this great convention. Um,
Hmm.
along certain lines, I haven't heard a lot. Haven't seen a lot, heard a lot. Um, certainly would like to hear. Certainly would like to hear more. But of what I have heard, the criticism
Hmm.
of, the whole this could have been an email, the criticism of all of the waste of all of the waste, and the making vulnerable, the creating of the target, of this creating this incredible target, creating this opportunity for someone, if there was if there were terrorists about, if man, if the
Hmm.
domestic
Right.
terrorists,
Yeah.
white supremacists, nationally, whatnot, who semi-identify with these, with these people. If there were some terrorists to worry about, this was a great opportunity.
It was an
You know,
incredibly. I mean, again, it just the level of incompetence
is quite
to
unimaginable. Yeah,
gather the entirety of your military leadership, right?
yeah.
The brain trust
The brain
of the
trust,
military with the
absolutely,
president present.
and the Secretary of War.
All I
Come
mean,
on, bad.
it just it's but again,
What?
it also speaks to the arrogance, though, of how
Yeah,
how dare anyone, right? But you're not even thinking about it's the
I'm
domestic
thinking,
blood, right? Where they
but
say
it had
the calls keep coming from inside the house. It's
to.
y'all, and there are plenty of anti-government folks who hate the U.S. military.
That's true. That's true.
You
I
know,
mean, that's true.
the domestic
That's
right
true.
wing, white nationalist terrorists who are responsible for over 80% of any right wing violence, mostly taking lives.
Absolutely.
And you bring
Yeah,
all the leaders,
maybe,
all the generals,
maybe what happened.
Army, Air Force,
Right.
Marines,
Maybe they thought this couldn't be
admirals.
real.
I guess maybe the
They thought
space agency
this was
too,
a psyop.
right?
This couldn't be real. Yeah.
And I understand there's also another high level set of like non-commissioned officers who are like way up there, so like the leaders of the sergeants and part of that brain trust that they were supposed to be there too. So I mean, again, you got offering somebody an opportunity to decapitate the entire, so maybe that's a good thing for the world, so to speak, but it's just like
Right.
the sheer incompetence of it. It's
It's that's wild. It's
it's
wild.
just
Yeah, that wouldn't
amazing
be
to me that you would
that would
even,
be
and it's not
mm-mm.
even a secret meeting.
No. It
It,
was, you want, it's, as people have said, we
indeed,
don't
it's
want to
live
be,
stream.
as right. People have said we don't want to be a part of your photo op. We resent being the backdrop to your photo opportunity,
It's wild.
you know. And
It's wild.
so
Wild.
there's all this wildness. What I
Yeah.
haven't heard, maybe you have, and I haven't, I just haven't heard in those kinds of responses, is I haven't heard a lot of pushback on this notion of the war, attacking the war within idea. I haven't heard
Yeah.
that. There's
Um,
one. Go ahead.
I know there have been some interviews by former generals on, at least some of the mainstream media about how
Okay.
out of pocket, that is, and
Okay.
that it's not,
Okay. Because I just,
So,
Yeah.
but some, some, right, and then the immediate aftermath, the next day, maybe later that day, um, MSNBC, CNN, on maybe and probably the major, broadcast networks also. So I've seen some um,
And I
from
mean
mainstream. Yeah,
specifically, and I mean specifically from that military class, from the,
yeah, yeah.
from
All
those folks, from
retired, right? Because you can't, because if you're current, if
right.
you're
You
what current, you can't say
can't,
anything, right? But,
right.
so,
You can't,
although
but
I'm just waiting for the leaks because even though you can't
yeah,
officially say anything, things do
you can
leak.
leak like a boat. Right.
Right, right. And so I am waiting for the leaks, and I am wondering about, again, how this is going to affect morale. What are these people thinking in terms of the fitness of the commander in chief and
Oh
the
my
defense
God.
secretary, right? And
Oh
or
my
even their concerns about, well, if we sort of pressure folks to say, hey, you need to invoke the 25th Amendment, do we want to deal with the JD Vance
right.
and whatever and what's behind him?
You're
So
between what they call
I'm wondering,
black. Right.
right? So
Yeah.
again, symptoms of the incredible crisis that within the United States, um, and what's going to happen with its military under these circumstances, and
Yeah.
what are we going to begin to see some resignations?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think some of that is already going on, at least with some of the rank and file. We saw,
Oh,
the response in that parade.
yeah.
What do they call it? Malignant compliance, I think was the phrase, when the
Okay.
soldiers were marching but not very sharp at all.
Okay.
Something
Okay.
like that, right? The only way that they could, express their disapproval of being used
Right.
as these props, right? And
Being out of
um,
step, being off
so
rhythm, being
it's a
sloppy.
wonder, right? It's a and again, in the context of the purges that have already happened at the Pentagon, clearly this talk on Tuesday was a call for further purges, in the military to try to consolidate loyal, like they did for that talk that he gave before the military parade, where they made it a point to vet the young cadets to fill the space with Trump supporters, young Trump supporters, um,
Right.
without the good sense to not clap wildly. Indeed, that's why they were brought in there.
Right. Right.
That's that's not the
Right.
military writ
Right.
large, right? And
Right.
uh, so it's going to
Right.
be interesting to see. And way back in February, maybe David Packman asked the question, what is the military going to do when it comes to the crisis moment? Right. So anyway.
Right. As have many people been asking that question, posing that question, watching the uh what is it, kicking the can down the road,
Hmm. Hmm.
seeing where it, looking at its path. So yeah, I mean, here it is. So, here it is. And um the people
Hmm.
we're also going to have, because I think a lot about there's so much, to be dazzled by, but my mind always returns to the effects of the economic destabilization
Yeah.
and the effects of the medical research and fundamental medical services destabilization, um, that really is going to have a kind of a really, a huge impact on the food and medicine supply, the quality of the food
Mhm,
eventually.
mhm,
That will start
mhm.
showing itself as they continue to, deregulate and, cut out oversight and and just slashing staff and it, and all of those, getting rid of staff and getting rid of, not have enough people to make a thing actually function. Those kinds of things. The way that people are going to need, um, we're going to need networks. We're going to need,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I'm saying? We're going to need
Mm-hmm.
those
I do.
influences. And there's a lot of folk who have skill sets. There's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of folk who have skill sets and have been practicing those skill sets, not in necessarily in the mindset of emergency, just in the mindset of, this ought be, we should
Right.
be growing our food. We should be doing
Right.
this. We should, but that kind
And
of
then
thing,
and
that
clean
kind of
soil that hasn't been poisoned, and
yeah,
be able to water that food with
yeah,
clean water. Right.
yeah. And skills spreads,
Yeah.
in terms of, kinds of basic skills that need to be spread. I've had a whole lot of thinking about the CERT program, that, and I'm sure they're still being offered. Um, but when I was a little bit closer to Crash Unity, there was a brother there who did, you know, uh, basically emergency preparedness training, crisis preparedness training, and it was
Um.
for
Yes. Well, brother
yeah,
EJ.
yeah, brother
Yeah.
EJ, brother
I took
EJ.
that class. Yes.
Yes, but it's a kind of a thing you got to take
Yeah.
repeatedly. At least I do.
Yeah. You gotta. Yeah, right.
I
You
took
gotta
it
do
once.
maintenance. You gotta do
Yeah,
maintenance. Right. You gotta do
maintenance.
maintenance review.
So it's in your
That's why you're supposed
body.
to renew your red what is it, Red Cross card, right? You're supposed to renew
Uh-huh.
that. Your
Yeah.
CPR certification,
All
right? I'm
exactly.
overdue. I know I'm overdue for
Right.
recertification.
Right. But we need those things. We need to people
Hmm.
learning
Hmm.
those things. Need
That's
to,
right. And make it habitual, right? Exactly.
and make it habitual.
Yeah. I
Make
mean,
those
you're
supplies.
reminding me. I need to take a class, right? It's time. It's
Right.
time. I need to renew, right?
Right.
Because we got
So
to be ready
right. To support ourselves and to
to support
with
ourselves.
that which we can, with that which we can. And I believe that we'll find out that there's a lot that we can do, that there's actually a lot that we
Hmm. Hmm.
can come out of
Right.
this, kind of consumer habit, convenience habit,
Hmm.
you know. Um, there's a lot of potential, a lot of potential in that. And we're not only potential, we about to do it. So we about to be
Right.
doing it.
Make it, and right, as people have been doing. Right. People are
Yeah.
making it happen. I mean, that's something we talked about a couple of weeks ago, in terms of the undertold stories.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's all kinds of resistance and effective resistance
Right.
going on in so many parts of the world all the time at the grassroots level, including in this
Yeah.
country. It does not get
Right.
coverage. There is no
Right.
labor section in most newspapers, but there's major
Hmm.
labor organizing going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Socialism is popular among
Mm-hmm.
the younger segment of the population. The As capitalism loses favor, so much so they got to
Yeah.
pass a so-called law that makes
Right.
anti-capitalism illegal, right?
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Which
Terrorist talk.
again,
That's terrorist
um,
talk. Right.
that okay, but yeah, but it has no. Well, here I am acting like the structures actually matter right now. I'm about to say it has no force of law, but
Right.
they're
Exactly.
ignoring all that stuff, right? And
Right.
Congress doesn't care or want to do anything, or so. Anyway, and they have to do that, right, because of these changes. Because, like I said at the beginning of our conversation, a new generation of farmers is not carrying on the political values of their parents. They are, and partly because they see it doesn't work, right? And I mean that's part of it, right? Is that they see it doesn't work, right? And
Mm-hmm.
or that they've been lied to, if nothing else, right? That it's just they've been lied to. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, the the thing is, and it's something that I forget, right? And it's easy to forget because it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's the normalization of things and the everyday going along, that these institutions are crumbling.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be it's the moment to create new institutions,
That's right.
um, new structures, because these institutions are, I know a lot of folks are, and I understand why, and I'm sympathetic to it. I know a lot of people are holding out a lot of hope for the 2026
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
midterm election. And yeah,
Yeah.
okay. But is that going to be transformative? What kind of Democrats are going to run? I mean, et cetera, all the stuff we know, right? And will it even
Right.
will it even go off? How
That
are they
that
going
yeah,
to,
that part.
how are they going to steal it? Because they're planning
Yes.
that. They're planning all these things and
Right.
ways of manipulating again, the accusations are projections, right? And um, so anyway, what are the new structures being built and who's building the new structures? And lots of people are, lots of different formations are, where we are, where lots of other folks are in this country, in the world,
Mm-hmm.
and including a new
Mm-hmm.
world order
Mm-hmm.
that's also being shaped.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's also being shaped, and being shaped by the global South, though that is not reported
Mm-hmm.
widely. Also, um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and yeah,
Mm-hmm.
struggle for sovereignty. Because folks are struggling for sovereignty over their resources, and including the land in so many places, and also fed up with their neo-colonial governments. Um,
Absolutely. Right
why
on.
they, the
Yeah.
northern powers still attempt to, manipulate everything on the ground. So speaking of one of those, whatever's happening in Nepal,
Mm-hmm.
I know there's been a lot of excitement among some folks about it. What's happening in
Yeah.
Nepal. You're able
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
get rid of the government.
Yeah.
They're calling it a Gen Z revolution.
Right.
Uh, is it a
Right.
color revolution or not? I have some pause, and my pause is based on whom I consider a very credible source. I have
Mm-hmm.
not listened to an update for about 2 weeks now, but I know at least 2 weeks ago in an interview, Vijay Prasad was very skeptical about the
Yeah.
sources and the
Uh,
platforming, who's funding, and he
I see.
makes the point, yeah, the monarchist party that was thrown out about 20 years ago,
Interesting. Okay.
or so, is
Mm-hmm.
very much uh, masked behind at least a sector of
Mm-hmm. Okay.
those in rebellion, or at least in some way fomenting it. So we need to look out for, is there going to be a call for a reinstatement of the monarchy? Um,
Mm-hmm.
or are other forces able to, which is not to say the Nepali government wasn't, isn't corrupt, had be non-responsive, whatever happened, had more or
Mm-hmm.
less, I know, when the monarchy was kicked out, they came in as a Maoist government, but I
Okay.
think almost immediately they began to try to make deals, with the West, or maybe take a neoliberal path at some
Mm-hmm.
point. Um, I don't know that they stayed strictly on a Maoist or Marxist trajectory. And I don't think it ever became a one party state or anything like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, there's more going on there, but in so many places though where there is
Mm-hmm.
rebellion,
Yeah.
they manipulate rebellion, right? So we
Right.
have we
Right.
have to take deep dives on everything.
Right. There's no um at a glance. There's
Right.
no taking it for granted, taking it at face value. Face value is the term that
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, always the tooth, double take, triple take, dig into it, figure out what's really going on, you know,
Yeah.
but you know, all the hopeful best, maybe we can count it
Yes.
as some kind of uh, a good sign that they know that they have to come in sheep's clothing. They know they have to
Yeah.
come in So that speaks to the popularity of the ideals and all of that. Who
Yeah.
was I
That's
listening to?
true.
Yeah, someone that I
Uh,
was listening to today. I can't
mhm.
remember it, so I'm not gonna hover over it too long. But someone I was listening to today just made the statement that it was a power to the of the people statement. Um,
Mhm.
just the assertion that movement comes from the people, not
Right.
the marginalized people, the people who are not in, essentially not in the middle classes, that don't have a stake, that don't have, and even if, part of the folks that are, that come into it are, but it was just an assertion of the reality of groundswell, the reality of the bottom up push for
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
creates space, that creates change, and that is
Yeah.
a reliable source, reliable cause, reliable source of movement.
Yes. Yes. Well, the empire isn't worth saving. It needs to go. What that looks like for the people who live on this land, what that looks like for the indigenous folks, what that looks like for the displaced African descendants um,
Hmm.
on this land and the other lands of the Turtle Island and its little turtlets in
Yes.
places. The
Yes.
Yeah, we'll see, right? How people can figure out to live together, live democratically in a
Yeah.
direct democracy way, live smaller in so many
Yes.
ways, um,
Yes.
and still live connected, right? I mean, there's a way, and people are smart enough to figure out a way for the world to be connected the way it is, as it has become, to be powered, and do so in a way that is not destructive to the planet and to individuals and everything that we share, the all our relations on the planet and everything we know.
Hmm.
There's a way. This isn't whatever they call it, Pollyanna, utopic, whatever, right? It is all quite doable
Hmm.
if people are given the wherewithal to do it.
Hmm.
You know, people are given the wherewithal to do it. So let's do that. And people are doing it. There's the resistance is happening, and we're going to cling to that. As the fascists don't get to win, and they only project their strength because they know they're weak. So yes, we've actually gone 25 minutes more than we thought we would.
Right.
So
So here we are.
we can go ahead and close up. Outrages and resistance, freeform rants, no particular topic, just a little commentary on the moment, right? The moment in the United States, the moment in the world. And that, the beginning of the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings film trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, how does it open with the voice of Galadriel? Galadriel, the world is changing, I think, right? The world is changing, and the world is changing. That's where we are. Um, so anyway, uh, that's it. You want to say anything? Any last comments before you say goodnight?
Um, you know, power to the people. Let's keep our spirits up and know, and it's not empty hope or false hope. We're in it to win it,
Yeah,
and we're going to ride this wave to the next space of victory for the people.
yeah.
Let's do it.
The
That's it.
next phase of victory for the people. I think that'll do. As I often do, then let me close with the words of Bob Marley. Revelation reveals the truth. It takes a revolution to make a solution. Make a revolution, y'all, and we'll see you next time.